Hey guys, it's coming in. This is my review for Skyscraper. And what Skyscraper is essentially about is we center on the totally original premise of Will Sawyer. He is a former Special Forces officer, but unfortunately he had to retire after tragically losing his leg during a assignment, and now he works for the security company, and he basically is appointed by this guy who runs this huge corporation from this tower called the Pearl, and basically he wants Johnson to work there for him, and him and his family are going to get to live in this Pearl. It's like the tallest building in the world pretty much, and everything seems to be going great. That is until this terrorist group actually infiltrates the building and tries to set it aflame to drive the main business, the guy who made this tower out of the building completely. However, we see that Sawyer starts to realize that his family is still in the tower and he needs to do what he can to rescue them before the entire building is engulfed in flames, and now we have the movie. So Skyscraper in general, I really was not looking forward to this at all. I mean, look, I really do like Dwayne Johnson. I think he's a very talented and likable actor. I do think, though, recently, he really has not been making the best choices. He seems to put himself in anything he can just kick ass in, and most times they're very disposable action films. You know, we had Rampage, which, that was okay. I mean, it was kind of like a fun movie that wasn't like the worst thing ever, but I've completely forgotten about it at this point, and at least that film, though, knew that it was dumb and had fun with itself. Skyscraper, on the other hand, just did not look that way to me. This looked like the definition of just a very dumb action movie that comes out in the summer that nobody really remembers. And what essentially do we have? A really dumb action movie that comes out in the summer that nobody remembers. However, it is a little bit better than I was expecting. Skyscraper is not necessarily a bad movie, but it is the definition of just a disposable action film, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And like I said, that's probably the main thing that people actually care about with this movie, because other than that, I don't really think many people care about this movie. I think it's really just because of the main actor involved. And yeah, Dwayne Johnson, he's good here. I mean, he's pretty good in anything. I don't think this is like one of his better performances or anything, but he does do a good job as Will Sawyer. He's a likable guy. You do feel for him. He's a little bit more human compared to some of Johnson's other roles, and I definitely did enjoy that, and you do feel for the character in that sense, but for the most part, there just really isn't anything to this guy. We'll get more to the character in a little bit, but the likability of Sawyer is not at all because of the character. It is mainly because of Johnson's likability as an actor. You want to see him get his family out of this situation. You know, you like seeing him climb buildings and save them or whatever, and that's really all there is to him, but he does do a good job of what he has here. Then the only other thing that I think people care about in this movie is Neve Campbell. How is she? Really damn good, I have to say. I think she actually was very good in this movie. She doesn't have anything like amazing to do, but she still is very good. This is a very good return for her. I did like the role that she plays in this movie. Her and Johnson do have really good chemistry, and she actually does have some pretty thrilling scenes where she actually does get to be a badass, and I really did like that about her character. And even in things where her character just didn't make any sense, Campbell, again, similar to Johnson, is so likable in the role that you kind of just end up going with it, and like I said, I think the two worked pretty well together. I definitely want to see her in something else that's much better than this, because I do think that she can still act quite well, and I really do want to see her actual return to movies, but this was a fun, return nonetheless. I think she overall did a good job here. And then the rest of the cast here, they do what they need to do. Chin Han, I mean, I guess he does a good job as, like, the main sort of, operator of this building. He's the guy who made the building and everything. He does a good job overall, I guess. Pablo Schreiber, I mean, he plays, you know, one of Sawyer's relatives, and he was alright in the film. All the other guys, though, I thought were pretty bad. All of the other sort of terrorists and the villains that we have, I thought were so cartoony, so over the top, and I really wasn't a fan of them. I will admit, Mckenna Roberts and Noah Cottrell as Will's daughter and son were not terrible. I thought they actually were okay for child actors. Nothing amazing, but much better than I think they could have been, and I was impressed by that overall. But other than that, there's really nothing that extraordinary in terms of the acting here. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, which that was easily the thing I was most worried about with this film, because someone like Brad Peyton, who is able to, you know, make films like Rampage and not take it very seriously at all and just go all out with it. You know, that's something that Brad Peyton is known for. He doesn't make like the greatest films or anything, but he's done things like San Andreas where, yeah, they're really dumb movies, but in the moment they can be fun. Rawson Marshall Thurber, I don't really hold to that kind of standard, and you know, really everything he's done since this is just, you know, really silly comedies like Easy A and things like, well, I mean, he actually just acted in that one, but things like We're the Millers and, you know, Dodgeball, which, you know, I think is okay. Nothing really that extraordinary, and his directing is not as bad as I thought. But it definitely is the biggest problem with this movie, without a doubt, because the problem with Rawson Marshall Thurber that very much surprised me is how deathly serious this movie really is. I mean, he, for the most part, does play this straight, unlike Rampage, which, like I said, is very aware of its ridiculousness. This film is not really the case. There are points where he inserts comedy in there, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but for the most part, he plays it very straight, and with the plot line of this movie, it just doesn't really work. It's very hard to take this plot line seriously, that this group of terrorists would just come in and they're going to set this tower on fire only to drive out, you know, only to drive out the main guy who is doing this because, you know, they want to take it over or whatever, and they want to hand over this item that they want. It's just, it's really ridiculous to think about, and the fact that they actually want me to take it seriously, it just simply does not work. And the tone, I mean, there are points in the movie where, yeah, you do feel just a little bit of thrills, but for the most part, I just felt that it really wasn't as, you know, good as a tone as it could be. Like, they could have had it where it could have been serious at points, but they don't take it too seriously. But no, they do actually take it quite seriously, and I don't think that it really worked, unfortunately. The writing also is very, very hollow. I mean, there really is not much to latch onto in this film. I will give the movie this. They do try to give Johnson a few more, just a little bit more shred of humanity, which I did enjoy, because, you know, in most films, he's basically a superhero. Like, he'll get his ass kicked, or he'll have, like, you know, organ damage, and you'll have in Rampage be like, oh, they just missed the vital organs. Like, this, it's ridiculous. It really is, and I think this film is kind of aware of that, so they do try to give him a few more layers of humanity. That's like, all right, there is someone who, he isn't totally invincible. Like, there are things that he can have some sort of physical damage. However, the only character we really get with him is that leg. If it wasn't for him losing that leg, this would pretty much be the same exact character as the other characters he's played. He does get his ass kicked a few times, but for the most part, he does still come out on top. He is still victorious in the end, and I think that's the biggest problem with Dwayne Johnson right now. It's not so much the characters he's playing, it's that Johnson has stated before that he doesn't want any of his characters to die. So any point when you have Will Sawyer in danger, or he's about to, like, fall off the building, there's no tension there. Like, I really was not fearing for his life at any point in this movie, and I just didn't really feel much of anything. I mean, my audience certainly did, but I suppose they didn't read that article. So, yeah, I just did not really feel for his character. Like, I will admit, them setting up how he lost that leg, it is effective, and they do a good job with that, but there just isn't much else with his character besides the loss of the leg. Other than that, there's really nothing else there, and it's just another very disposable, Dwayne Johnson character. There just really isn't much there. And like I said, the main storyline really isn't doing this film any favors. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. The villain's plan is honestly ridiculous, and it's very hard to buy into. And the problem is, the movie keeps cutting back to it, and they keep trying to make this seem like a shocking thing. When there is a reveal in like the second or third act of this movie, it's supposed to feel like this big moment, and it just feels so obvious where they ended up going with it. I knew exactly where it was going. There really was nothing unpredictable about this movie whatsoever. And that's another big problem here. And again, it's not like there is no tension in the film. There's actually a very good sequence with Dwayne Johnson and his family where they have to walk across this beam, and, you know, he has to, like, lift up this platform or whatever, and they have to, like, try to walk across the platform without falling into the fire. That was an effective scene. I did think that scene was well done, but that was more because of how the actors delivered it and things like that, rather than how the scene was written, because I do think that was an effective scene. But for effective scenes like that, we have scenes where Johnson is working in this turbine, and basically he's attached like duct tape to his leg or whatever, and somehow he gets out of there before the propeller just completely decimates him, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. And also, yeah, this movie is this very weird recurring thing with duct tape, where somehow duct tape solves all your problems, I guess. I mean, there's literally a scene with him like climbing a building and him like belaying onto this rope, wrapping duct tape around him, and I got flashbacks to like in high school and middle school when you have like character ed in gym class and you're learning how to like go like rock climbing and shit. Like that's what this reminded me of. This is not something that you can really use in a serious action film, and it just did not really work here. The whole duct tape joke I thought was just really dumb. The film tries to be self-aware many times. However, it's not self-aware in the way that Rampage was, where it just goes off the rails with its concept. It's self-aware where Dwayne Johnson will, you know, he will sometimes occasionally like say things to himself, and he'll say things that the audience is thinking, and it's supposed to be really funny, and it just feels awkward and weird. Like, why would he be saying that to himself? It doesn't really work. Now, I heard that Die Hard does something very similar to this, which, trust me, this film is going to get endless comparisons to that. I myself can't really do that because I haven't seen Die Hard, but the comparisons are definitely there for sure from what I know about that film. I just can't really say much because, like I said, I haven't seen Die Hard. But yeah, the comparisons are definitely there, and what they did here, it just felt really ridiculous, and again, very hard to buy into like a lot of the film. So yeah, the writing is very much whatever. It just didn't really feel much of anything. The cinematography also is really, really not good here. I mean, there are some good shots here and there. Like, there's some good shots of, you know, him climbing the building or whatever, or a shot of him almost falling off. There are some good scenes here and there, but anytime the characters come close to ending up in the fire, it just feels so fake. Everything about it feels like a video game. It feels like it was digitally inserted. It doesn't feel like it was there, and it just feels like the characters are interacting with nothing. So yeah, the cinematography is really not strong here. I will admit, the building itself, I actually did like the look of the building, and I thought some of the world building, like some of the places they end up going, there's just one really cool room, for example, that I did like, but it just really wasn't anything that great, and I just did not think it was very strong here. The score was whatever, I don't really care about, and then the editing, I will admit, for the first like 20 or 30 minutes of this movie, I was honestly on the verge of falling asleep. I was so bored when, you know, with what was going on. You know, you have this great sequence with him losing his leg, and it just gets really boring from there. It's not till the tower is set on fire where the adrenaline is pumped up a little bit, and you do start to get a little bit more into it. But again, just not a very interesting story, and that really is the biggest problem with this film. It does not have a very interesting story to begin with, and the characters aren't really that interesting, so when you put them in harm's way, you just don't really feel much of anything. You don't care about the villains. There are some cool action scenes here and there, but you know exactly where this is going to go. It's incredibly predictable. It doesn't really do anything anything that different. It's not as bad as I think it could have been, but it still is a incredibly forgettable movie that I'm probably going to forget the second I'm done with this review, that really is just there to be another vehicle for Johnson, but really does make me question why he keeps doing films like this. Like, this is another very disposable film, and I just don't really think it's going to get any conversation whatsoever, unfortunately. I think, like I said, everyone's probably going to forget about this film in probably a few weeks, similar to, I did. And because of that, I am going to give Skyscraper overall a C. But over, guys, in my review of Skyscraper, let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall, love your thoughts. And like I said, really nothing that great, nothing that you really need to go out and see. There are much better films out there. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.